Hi, my name's Campbell. I'm here at the Woodspeen Cookery School and Restaurant, and we're going to demonstrate some bread. So the first thing is, we talk about the flour, so we need some really good strong bread flour. We've got some salt, some compressed baker's yeast, and this is a little bit of dough from yesterday's bread, and this is called pinchback. What it will do, it will give you a better crust and perhaps a little bit more of a sour note in the taste. It's not essential, but I like using that. And the water, simple process. This has got to be just below body temperature, and the bread proves at room temperature. They're the two key principles of temperature. So the first thing is, I'm going to add the yeast one side of the bowl, and that's important. Yeast is killed by the salt, so that needs to be kept separate. In the middle of the bowl, pour the water, and then just bring that together to form quite a sticky dough. And once all that's come together, we're going to knead it onto the board. Just a couple of key principles, which is temperature of the water and how it proves, and how it's knocked back, and we'll go through that a little bit later in the process. So as you can see, it's starting to form a little bit of a sticky dough. Now we want to form this into one mass, one complete mass. And then at that point, we start to work the gluten and activate the strength of the bread, which will help us give us the lift. So it's important, if you're learning to bake or you're making bread for the first time, make it by hand and you get a good feeling. Bread's all about the visceral feel of how it feels, how the dough feels. Is it smooth? Is it elastic? Is it silky? And you can only do that by using it by hand. Okay, so now the gluten's well worked, we're going to tear in the pinchback. So this is the same as this. It's just that when we've made the dough yesterday, we've retained a small percentage, probably about 15%. We've kept that back, and each day we add it to our bread, and that just gives it a boost. So as we said earlier, it improves the crust and it gives you a beautiful sour note. So once that's all worked in, we're going to leave it to prove. And we're going to leave it to prove at room temperature, about 20, 21 degrees. Now that's important, and it gives it the best environment for the yeast to do its thing. And what the yeast wants to do is break down the starch, which is the sugar in the flour, and use that as food, create gas, which pushes the bread up. Now the gluten that we've been working for the last 4 to 5 minutes is the structure. So in between the gluten strands, we're going to have yeast and yeast cells. That's going to create gas, it's going to push up. And then we're going to push that down. That's called knockback. That's going to be our first thing we do after this. So we're going to knock it back and create more yeast cell. And that's going to take about an hour. So now that knockback's been worked in, pop it into a flour bowl, very light, just a light dusting. So we'll put the cloth on top. This cloth's damp. It's important that you've got a damp cloth over the top. It just keeps the skin moist, and what that moisture does, it keeps the skin flexible, so it's allowed to rise and increase in volume. So we'll leave that for about an hour, double in volume, and then we'll knock it back. Okay, now the bread's been proving for about an hour. It's come up at least double. Now, if we call this the face and underneath the scar, and we get them in the right order, that's key. So hand underneath, straight onto the table, face side down, and you can feel a distinct difference in the dough now. It's softened off, it's beautifully smooth and silky, and it's just got a little bit of give, so it's less tight and restricted. It's got plenty of gas in there. So the aim now is to remove the gas by pushing down. This is why it's called knockback. But also, we want to create more yeast cell. The next time this proves, it's going to be a lot quicker. It's going to be about 35 minutes, 40 minutes max. And then we're going to do it again, and that's also going to create more yeast. So the more we knock back, the quicker the proving method's going to be. So very simple. As you can hear, all the air's coming out now. So it's just that downward motion. And then bring in the dough, and it's just beautifully soft, not sticky, nice and smooth. So again, now the face becomes the face and the scar is still the scar. Back in the bowl, cover with a damp cloth, 40 minutes, we'll knock it back again. Okay, now this has had 3 knockbacks, now it's time to shape. So again, remove from the bowl as we did earlier. Face down, scar up. You need to get a little bit of the air out of this, but not too much because we're going to roll when we're shaping. So with the sharp knife's important because it will just cut the structure instead of breaking the structure. So I'll make a boulette out of this. So similar to when we knock back. So form a ball, pulling that skin over, making sure that it's nice and tight. All the air is out. Again, creating more yeast. The boulette. Again, we're pulling that skin so it's nice and tight. So a nice seal at the bottom, seal at the sides. A well-oiled piece of cling film over the top, prevent it from drying out. Now the loaves are proven up. Again, the same as the rolls. So a light dusting of flour. Now make sure they can move. So with the boulette, I'm going to cut it into 4 squares. So it's a traditional sour style. And that will open up. So we're going to put the oven on. It's a very simple chef's hat onto the oven setting. 230 degrees on. And the beauty about the oven is it alarms when the temperature is ready. So instead of a light clicking in and out, this will alarm and tell you when the oven's ready for your bread. And if you've got a wood-fired stove at home, that works. But these ovens, the fan is that good. It acts almost like a wood-fired oven. It's got a great crown on the top, which distributes the heat. And for bread, my challenge domestically is to find an oven that's good enough for bread. And this really mimics the crown in that wood-fired oven. So the bread slip, and it just allows you to take it to the oven. Any bit of bread, any bit of wood would do. So position them in the oven well so they don't touch. Again, some water to allow that skin to flex. Close the oven. That's going to take about 25-30 minutes. So again, after 3 to 4 minutes, open the oven, allow that excess steam to come out. Then you've got a dry oven and then it starts to bake. Now the loaves have had about 35 minutes, so they're baked nice and crisp on the outside. So I'm going to take them out of the oven. It's nice bloomer style. Nice little boulette for toast. Beautiful. And again, let these settle, let them cool. And while they're cooling, you might hear them crack, and that's called singing. So the bread will sing. And that's the inside starting to shrink, the outside staying structured, and it starts to crack. That cracking just proves that it's got a really good crust, and I can see, it's nice and crisp on the outside, beautiful, fresh, baked